Ever catch yourself kind of admiring a Jaguar as it drives by?
Yeah.
You know, those cars just ooze luxury, and they always make you wonder who's behind the wheel. Right?
Yeah, there's just something about a Jag.
And today's deep dive is going to take us right to the heart of that legacy. Because we're talking about none other than Ratan Tata, the mastermind who brought Jaguar Land Rover, you know, those iconic British brands, right into the Indian fold.
Yeah, that's right.
And, you know, you specifically asked us to dig a little deeper than just those typical billionaire industrialist headlines. So we're cracking open this biography. And let me just tell you, it's a fascinating read. Ratan Naval Tata, a legacy of leadership, innovation, and compassion. A mouthful, but it promises to be an interesting one.
It really does. And you know, it's funny because when you think about Ratan Tata, you don't often think about compassion, but it's certainly a huge part of his story. And this book really dives into that.
Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty, paint the picture for us. We hear about the Tata family, their influence in India, but for someone who might not be familiar, just how big are we talking?
Imagine, if you will, a company so deeply rooted, so woven into the very fabric of life in India, that you'd be hard-pressed to go a single day without encountering one of their products or services.
Wow. Okay, so everywhere, basically.
Everywhere. I mean, we're talking everything from the salt on your table to the software powering your devices, the steel in those towering skyscrapers to, yes, even those sleek automobiles we were just talking about.
That's the Tata Group.
That's the Tata Group in a nutshell, a legacy over 150 years in the making. A true cornerstone of Indian industry.
Okay, so we're not talking about your average mom and pop shop here.
Not even close.
So Ratan Tata, he's born into this. This is dynasty level stuff.
Yeah.
So I imagine a childhood of privilege, silver spoons, all that jazz.
Well, here's the thing. While it's true he was born into the lap of the Tata family, his early years, they weren't without their share of difficulties, you know.
Oh, really? Tell me more about that.
Well, picture this. Ratan, just a young boy, around 7 years old when his parents separate. It's his grandmother, the remarkable Lady Navajbai Tata, who steps in, who primarily raises him, shapes him.
I mean, that's got to leave a mark, being raised by such a strong figure, especially during those formative years, you know.
Absolutely. And you see those early experiences, they really seem to have forged something in him, this sense of resilience, of independence, of carving his own path that really defines his trajectory later on. And then you add another layer to the mix, his education.
Oh, yeah, because this wasn't just any education, right?
No, not at all. So after his early years in India, he goes on to study architecture and engineering at Cornell University and then tops it off with Harvard Business School.
Talk about a blend, huh? You've got that Western education, but with that traditional Indian upbringing. So how does that shape his approach, especially when it comes to leading a company as deeply rooted in Indian tradition as the Tata Group?
Well, and that's where it gets really interesting. You know, you might think, okay, prestigious education, family legacy, he's going to waltz right into the top spot. But that's not Ratan Tata.
No.
Not one bit. Instead of a cushy corner office, he chooses to roll up his sleeves. And get this, he starts his career on the shop floor of Tata Steel.
Really? You're kidding.
No joke. Shoveling limestone alongside the other workers.
Shoveling limestone. Not exactly glamorous, huh?
Not at all. But I think that decision right there, it speaks volumes, doesn't it? It shows this deep-rooted belief in understanding a business from the ground up, in respecting every single level of the workforce, and valuing that hands-on experience above all else.
Yeah, that's a far cry from, you know, dictating from an ivory tower, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're talking about a man who's clearly not afraid to get his hands dirty, literally.
Not at all.
So he eventually does rise through the ranks, takes the helm of the Tata Group. So as chairman, what were some of the defining moves that really set him apart?
You know, his time as chairman, particularly in those pivotal 90s and 2000s, was marked by this bold, almost audacious vision. He was determined to make the Tata Group a global force, and one of his biggest power moves, the acquisition of Jaguar Land Rover in 2008.
Oh, yeah, that was huge. I remember when that happened, a lot of people were scratching their heads, wondering if an Indian company could really handle such iconic British brand.
Oh, absolutely. There were skeptics everywhere. Was a gamble a big one?
It was a risk, for sure.
But you see, Ratan Tata, he saw beyond those initial doubts. He saw the potential, the strength of those brands, and he was determined to restore them to their former glory.
And he did. You can't argue with the results. Jaguar Land Rover under Tata Motors, it's thriving.
Exactly, thriving.
But that wasn't his only bold move, was it?
Oh, not even close.
Like what else?
Remember 2007? That's when he orchestrated the acquisition of Chorus Steel,
Oh, wow.
a massive Anglo-Dutch steelmaker.
Yeah, that rings a bell. Huge
Yeah.
deal.
It was a game changer, transforming Tata Steel into one of the world's leading players in the industry.
So it seems like he was making some pretty big moves on the world stage. But I gotta wonder, was this all just about business? Expanding the Tata portfolio, Or was there something more driving him?
You're definitely onto something there. I mean, yes, expansion was part of it, but these were calculated moves, strategic, and definitely about more than just profit margins.
What do you mean?
This was about putting India on the map, showcasing its prowess on a global scale. It was about proving that India could compete, could innovate, could win on that world stage. And Ratan Tata was determined to lead the charge.
It's like he had something to prove.
He did.
Not just for himself, but for India as a whole.
Exactly.
Wow. It's interesting how that desire to challenge perceptions, it just seems to be a recurring theme in his story, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And, his ambitions, they weren't limited to just those big acquisitions, those established names. He also had this drive to innovate, to push the boundaries within the Tata Group itself.
And that's where the Tata Nano comes in.
The Nano, exactly.
The world's cheapest car at the time. A car that was supposed to change everything for transportation in India. Talk about a bold idea.
It really was. The vision behind it, the driving force, was to make car ownership a reality for millions of Indians, people who always thought it was completely out of reach.
A car for the people, essentially.
Absolutely. Imagine the impact, right? Families who were squeezing onto motorcycles or scooters, often with kids, suddenly having access to affordable, safe transportation.
Yeah, a car designed with a purpose that went beyond just profit.
Yeah.
But it didn't quite go as planned, did it?
Sadly, no. I mean, it had its heart in the right place, but the Nano faced some pretty rough terrain.
Yeah, kid.
Production hiccups, marketing misfires, and then those safety concerns.
Yeah, those were big.
It all kind of snowballed, and the Nano just couldn't quite climb out from under it. It never really reached its full potential.
It makes you think, even with the best of intentions, even with someone as driven and capable as Ratan Tata at the helm, things don't always pan out. So how did he deal with that? Because it couldn't have been easy.
It's interesting, isn't it? Some people might have retreated, licked their wounds, but not Ratan Tata. He seems to have this incredible ability to process setbacks and then channel that energy elsewhere.
So what did he do?
He turned his attention to a cause that was already close to his heart, but it took on even greater significance after the Nano. Philanthropy.
Right, because this wasn't just some kind of side hobby for him, was it?
Not at all. It was entwined with everything he did, with his belief that businesses should be a force for good. And for him, this was more than just writing checks.
Okay, so let's talk about that, the Tata Trusts. It's a big part of his legacy, but most people probably don't know the ins and outs.
So the Tata Trust, they're actually a group of philanthropic organizations. They were established way back, early 20th century, by the Tata family. And they're all about driving social development initiatives in India.
So everything from...
Everything. We're talking poverty alleviation, healthcare, education, you name it. Even environmental sustainability is a huge focus for them.
Wow. So they're tackling some pretty major issues.
They are. And Ratan Tata, he didn't just inherit this legacy, he really grabbed the reins. Under his leadership, they launched some incredibly impactful programs.
Give me an example.
Okay, take the Tata Water Policy Program. India's water crisis, it's no secret. But this program, they're tackling it head on through research, advocacy, working directly with communities.
So real tangible action.
Exactly. And that's something you see throughout his life, whether he's shaking up the steel industry, taking on those iconic car brands, or tackling something as essential as water. He's always pushing boundaries, never content with the status quo.
It's a really interesting contrast. On the one hand, you've got this business titan building an empire, but at the same time, there's this commitment to giving back, to social responsibility. It's almost paradoxical.
It is. It's one of the things that makes him such a fascinating figure, And all the while, he was incredibly private about his personal life, never really revealing his inner thoughts, his feelings.
Yeah, he's known for being pretty tight-lipped.
Yeah.
Never married, dedicated himself completely to his work, his philanthropy.
It speaks volumes, doesn't it? It's almost like this profound sense of purpose, wouldn't you say? Like, he wasn't driven by those typical trappings of wealth, the mansions, the lavish lifestyle. In fact, he famously lived in a simple apartment.
Really? That's pretty incredible considering his wealth. So if it wasn't about personal gain, what was it about? What made him tick?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I'm not sure there's one easy answer. It's probably a mix of everything: his upbringing, those challenges early on, his Western education, but also that deep connection to India, to his family's legacy.
He was this fascinating blend of, like you said, innovation and tradition, ambition and humility. It's not every day you see that in someone, let alone someone who's achieved what he has. It's like he redefined what it means to be a captain of industry in India, you know?
He really did. He challenged those old ideas of what a business leader should be, should do. It wasn't just about the bottom line for him, was it? It was bigger than that.
Yeah, that social purpose was woven into everything.
Absolutely.
And you can't deny the impact he had. I mean, the Tata Group today, it's a testament to his vision, isn't it?
It really is.
But it goes beyond even that. He inspired a whole generation of entrepreneurs in India. Those folks who were just starting out, they had someone to look up to.
He showed them it was possible. You could dream big, you could compete on that global stage, but you could also do it right.
He set a new standard, didn't he? Corporate governance in India, it's different thanks to him.
For sure. He understood, that real success wasn't just about the numbers.
Right.
It was about building something that would last, something built on trust, integrity.
And giving back.
Exactly.
As we're wrapping up this deep dive into Ratan Tata's life, that question keeps coming back to me. What was it that really, truly fueled him? I mean, was it ambition? Was it this sense of duty to his family, their legacy? Or was there something more there?
It's a tough one, isn't it? There's no easy answer, no one thing you can point to, but maybe that's what makes him so compelling, right?
Yeah, he can't be put in a box.
Exactly.
We see the ambition, for sure,
Oh, yeah.
but also this incredible humility, this drive to achieve, to build, but not for himself, really.
He was playing a different game, It was like he was driven by something bigger than himself.
It's fascinating.
It really is.
This belief that industry, business, it could be a force for good, it could uplift a whole nation.
Solve real problems, create opportunities where there were none before.
It's inspiring. And that brings us back to you, dear listener. We've spent this time with you, digging into the life of Ratan Tata, a man who really walked that line between business and philanthropy. A man of contradictions, maybe, but definitely a man who left his mark. What are you taking away from all this? What struck you the most?
It's a story that makes you think, don't you think?
It does. It makes you challenge your own assumptions about leadership, about success, about what role businesses should play in the world.
And at the end of the day, I think it's a reminder that even when you're aiming for those big goals, that commitment to doing good, it can be a powerful force.
It can be the driving force. So we'll leave you with that thought as you go about your day. What will your legacy be? How will you choose to make your mark on the world?